Hi, it's the Tax Geek, with more of your taxes oversimplified. In this video, we're going to learn how to amend a tax return. When you need to make changes to a previously filed tax return, you prepare an amendment to your tax return, showing the changes you're making to the original return on a Form 1040-X. There are two primary reasons tax returns are amended. 1. To correct a mistake, and 2. To claim a tax benefit that was not claimed on the original tax return. Of course, these days, just like regular tax returns, amendments are usually prepared using some sort of software, but today we're going to look at the process step by step so you can gain an understanding as to how amendments work by seeing one prepared by hand. Let's meet Terrence. When he filed his return, he mistakenly believed he could no longer claim as a dependent his 20-year-old daughter who lived with him and went to college. When he prepared his return earlier in the year, he was quite unhappy about the fact that his 2020 return had a balance due. One day, Terrence stumbled upon this video on dependents and the American Opportunity Credit and realized he could indeed still claim his daughter as a dependent and, as a bonus, claim an American Opportunity Credit for the expenses he paid for her schooling. So here's how Terrence would go about amending his tax return. First, he needs a copy of his original return. This is absolutely essential to amending the return correctly. Do not attempt to amend a tax return unless you have a copy of the original return at hand. Terrence then prepares a revised return using the income from the old return, but adding in the new information. This revised return is not the amended return, but is used as a reference in preparing the amendment. Since Terrence is now claiming his daughter as a dependent, he can now change his filing status to head of household. Here, Terrence lists the name and social security number of his daughter, and checks that she qualifies for the credit for other dependents. This credit goes on line 19 of page 2 of the revised 1040. For the education credit, Terrence uses Sheena's 1098-T from North State University to prepare this Form 8863. It looks like he is eligible for a $1,500 non-refundable education credit and a $1,000 refundable credit. The non-refundable credit goes on Schedule 3, Part 1, and then is added to his credit for other dependents, and the total is entered on line 13B of page 2 of the 1040. The refundable part of the education credit goes directly on the revised 1040. Terrence then recalculates his tax. Since he has a larger standard deduction, he has a lower taxable income and thus a lower tax. This tax is reduced further by the credit for other dependents and the non-refundable portion of the education credit. He then applies his withholdings and the refundable part of the education credit to his net tax to arrive at this refund amount, which is what his refund would have been if he had filed the return with his dependent daughter and claimed the education credit on his original return. But Terrence doesn't send this revised form to the IRS. Instead, he uses it to prepare the revised figures on a Form 1040-X. So now Terrence prepares his amendment. Page 1 of his original return is on the left, and the blank amendment is on the right. First, he heads the amendment, indicating the tax year he's amending and his filing status. Even if he weren't changing his filing status, he still has to indicate it. From page 1 of his original return, Terrence enters his original adjusted gross income, standard deduction, and taxable income in column A of the 1040-X. The original amounts of Terrence's tax and withholdings from page 2 of the original return are also entered on the appropriate lines in column A. Since he had a balance due on the original return and he had paid it, he enters that amount on line 16 of the amendment. If the balance due had not yet been paid, he would have left this line blank. From page 1 of the revised return, Terrence enters his new adjusted gross income, standard deduction, and taxable income in column C of the amendment. Any differences are listed in column B with negative numbers shown in parentheses. Turning to page 2 of his revised return, Terrence enters his revised tax and new total credits in column C, again noting any differences in column B. He then lists his withholdings, which hasn't changed, and after checking the box marked 8863, enters the refundable education credit on line 15. He then adds his withholdings, the credit, and the amount he originally paid together, and subtracts the total from his new net tax to arrive at the refund he is due on this amendment. The refund on the revised return is added to the amount he paid with the original return to arrive at the refund on the amendment. But he's not quite done yet. In Part 1 of page 2 of the amendment, Terrence indicates that he is claiming an additional dependent and lists that dependent in the space indicated. In Part 3 of page 2, Terrence gives a simple explanation of the changes he is making to his return. In this case, he is changing his filing status, adding his daughter as a dependent, and claiming an education credit. The easiest and quickest way to file an amendment is to e-file it, which can be done through online software or professional preparers. If you are mailing the amendment, do not send the revised tax return you prepared for reference. Instead, send pages 1 and 2 of the amendment plus any forms and schedules that have been created or changed. In this case, Terrence sends Schedule 3 and Form 8863 along with the amendment. Texas has no personal state income tax, so Terrence doesn't need to amend his state return, but that might not apply to you. Check with your state to see what's required. To claim any refunds, you must amend your return no more than 3 years after the due date of the return, or 2 years after the tax was paid, whatever is later. Currently, it is taking the IRS about 16 to 20 weeks to process an amendment if e-filed, longer if the amendment was mailed. You can check the progress of your amendment by going to irs.gov and go to the Where's My Amended Return page. Of course, this is just a brief overview of the amended return process. Additional information and resources are found in the links in the video description. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Please share this video with anyone who would find it useful. Please direct any questions, comments, or suggestions to the comment space below. You can email me at taxesoversimplified@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter at TaxGeekUSA. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with more of your taxes oversimplified.